Now, don't get me wrong. Christmas is all well and good, but when it means that game developers get to have a holiday and a break, that makes me very sad. That means no news for a long time while the silence has finally been broken. They are slaving away again, and today we got a nice big blog post outlining in pretty good detail the next 3 months of Guild Wars 2. There's a lot of information in this post. I will condense it as best as possible and tell you guys exactly what's happening with Heart of Thorns, with Guild Wars 2, over the next little while. And this actually includes stuff, basically perspective for the entire year, and leading all the way up into their next expansion. So the blog post starts off with this very simple fact, this thing that we've already heard about a couple of times already, that they are now focusing on depth with the game, on expanding current systems that are in the game, on adding a lot of content, and focusing less on being experimental. It's worded a little differently in this blog post, I feel, in a better way. Maybe that's just marketing or something. I was a little concerned before with their comments that basically Arenanet were no longer interested in adding new systems, that even if they could really help the game, because those first few years are kind of done now, and any major overhauls or changes they do really aren't going to run very much distance. Now what they need to do is focus on a lot of content. And in this blog post they reiterate that, but they kind of give some examples. So for example, releasing the game in a new region, such as China. I actually think, given the amount of time it seems to have taken them and the amount of updates and things that went into it that we as Western players never really saw at all, and then given that we barely ever hear about how Guild Wars 2 is doing in China, that kind of thing we're not going to be seeing them doing, and that is where they're going to make many gains on actually giving us a lot of new content, so it would seem. Alright, so also they've announced a structure for their updates. Remember how they told us that every 3 months or so we'd have a big balance update? And then this would weave in and out of the PvP leagues, so there'd be a balance update, then you could play competitively, there'd be minor tweaks and things to address certain things in the meta as they go, and then it would reset, we'd have a new balance pass and so on. It actually sounds like each of those 3 monthly things, they're tying not just to skill balance, but to a whole ton of things, and they've given us the idea of major seasonal updates. This sounds a little bit like their new version, or their new idea, a new iteration on the old feature patch system, or the feature pack system, which gave us 2 big updates in the past, but then the second of the 2 was heavily criticized, and they took a long time, and they seem to have moved away from it, as actually we were speculating about a long time ago they wouldn't do this again. So it's actually very similar. You guys may remember, even back in those old days, they wanted to tie balance updates to the feature patches, and then they never ended up doing too many of them, and we were harmed for quite a while. So this is every 3 months. It's kind of like, alright, for Guild Wars 2 from now on, every 3 months there's going to be a big patch. So if you're not even actively playing the game, if you're keeping just one eye on it, if you're watching news channels like mine, for example, every 3 months or so, that's when we're getting a big bulk of new things coming in. So that's the idea. And the first of those to drop in, which they're calling the Winter 2016 seasonal update, that is actually happening on the 26th of January. So not long away at all, like very soon, and it brings quite a lot of things that are quite left field, actually. And I'm going to start, first of all, of these many exciting updates, talking about a buff to the Shatterer. Alright, I got egg on my face. I hold my hands up. I did you guys wrong. My speculations were perhaps incorrect. Just as early as yesterday, I did a Q&A video where I said, hey, it looks like they're moving away from giant world boss mega, 100-man player difficult content, and they're instead content with just having raids in the game. And I expressed dissatisfaction with this direction because I very much enjoyed Tequatl and the Triple Trouble Worm, and to an extent the Marionette and so forth in the game previously, and it seemed like they weren't doing it because they'd nerfed the Chuck Garrett down, right? Well, actually, they're updating the Shatterer. Oh my god! So if this is going to be a Tequatl style update, I am so pumped. The Tequatl update is one of my favourite updates of all time. One of the things I've always found saddest about this game is you go back, right? You go back a few years, you look at the original trailers for Guild Wars 2, the original things that got you into the game, and I can always guarantee you, people that were hyped by the game at launch saw a trailer that had this huge epic moment where the Shatterer crashes down and destroys everything, and then all these people charge into him, and it looked like this epic, awesome thing on the game. And then for 3 years now, we've all just quietly been like scratching the back of our necks and thinking, ooh, yeah, that's basically just stack on a rock and face roll the keyboard. You don't even have to face roll the keyboard. It's stack on a rock, auto attack once, go off, make yourself a Belgian bun and cup of tea, come back and halfway through your delicious snack, you suddenly get a reward, right? It was just so badly implemented, but has so many cool ideas for being a great event, has these siege ideas and events associated with it to bring supply lines in theory, all these cool ideas that you can look back at original dev statements, which I may do in another video about their original ideas. Maybe they will finally realize. So this is a big revamp to the Shatterer fight. Maybe it will eventually live up to the trailers. I think even if they just hit par with the complexity of the event as we see on, say, Tequatl or the Chuck Garren, not necessarily talking difficulty right now, I'll be much happy with that. And of course, for those of you who only play MMOs for the rewards, they are overhauling the rewards. He's getting new loot from his chest. There's going to be a new back piece associated with him, as far as I remember. Now, they've never actually added a Shatterer mini to the game. It's a little bit like the old Glint mini in Guild Wars 1 thing that they couldn't do because they felt it was too complex. Will we finally get a Shatterer mini? Oh, this is going to be great. Now, consider, though, that all these changes and making the event generally more badass doesn't mean that it's going to be ultra difficultly tuned like we saw with Triple Trouble and like we saw with Tech. They could put it to current Chuck Garrent difficulty levels and still make the event more complicated and interesting and rewarding, and probably view that as a success in the eyes of most of the community. So my statements from yesterday that they may have moved away from ultra difficult open world stuff may still be true, as there's no confirmation or discussion on the difficulty of this new event at all. Consider that the first packs they did after the release of the game, they were entirely focused on that Tequatl revamp. That's all they wanted to talk to us about. They were that proud of it back then. If we're getting something of the same quality, then that's going to be absolutely fantastic. And it could mean that we'll see some stuff for Jormag in the future too. There are, of course, the lore discussions here. Some people are immediately thinking, oh my god, this could mean Crystal Desert expansion. This could mean that the Living World's going to have something to do with that. But I'm not too much on that bandwagon. I mean, we saw Tequatl got stronger, and that was kind of a thing in lore. But did that mean that the next expansion was purely dictated by Risen stuff? No. So does that mean that the next expansion here is going to be to do with Kralkatorrik? Who knows? Maybe Jormag will have his update as well before the next expansion, and it won't really matter. But anyway, it's cool, and something I definitely wasn't expecting. Alright, so the next thing I want to talk about is the balance. So, we've had for a long time that we're going to be doing these 3 monthly balance patches. They did do a blog post where they talked about their ideas for changes with the game. The blog post was, I read this out on stream, I gave you guys in some quite colourful language my original impressions of this post. And it's about, I would say, 85% nonsense. They dedicate a little section to every individual class and basically just say, in more or less the same words, oh yeah, we're going to try and buff underused options and nerf overused options. Alright, that's basically all they say to us. There are a few little nuggets of information, though. I will summarize those right now. Number one, they are simplifying the downstate. It seems like they're only doing this in response to Chronomancer, but slow no longer affects downstate, quickness no longer affects downstate. In general, I'm not happy with this change because I think it is only being done as a quick fix to a problem that only exists because of Chronomancer, because of Heart of Thorns. Until this point in the game, they never considered the slow or the quickness and stuff to be negative aspects of the downstate. If anything, they made it more complicated and more varied and more interesting and helped Guild Wars 2 play off of this unique system it has in comparison to its competitors in the MMO market, right? It was cool, and I liked the complexity in the downstate, so this does make me sad. On the other hand, though, and this is kind of a weird silver lining, now that the downstate is a little bit more simple, I and the rest of the community at large am less likely to rage my ass off when somebody does something really stupid, like doesn't vapor form when they see an obvious quickness stomp coming at them. I don't know. It's a bit of a weird silver lining, but fine. The downstate in general, my honest opinion, is still going to be fairly complicated. There's a lot of plays to make with blinking, with double tapping, mesmers, with stability specifically, and many different things. And when you push it into the team fight scenario, it does still remain a very interesting part of the game. It just does look like a bit of a quick fix to me. So another thing they mentioned in the post, but never gave any examples of, is they said that they're thinking of changing the thematic ideas behind certain professions or elite specs to suit meta. So I guess what this means is some of the themes of the professions, like their roles, their niches, what they are good at, what they're bad at, are not distinct enough right now, or are in kind of an unsettled or weird place, or could be in a more defined place, and they're looking to change that, but there was basically no examples of it given in the post. The other really specific thing that I remember they gave was Ranger shouts are getting buffs. There you go, guys, to the 9th of my audience right now who play Rangers. Oi, you're getting shout buffs, which I do actually think is really cool because shouts have been terrible since the launch of the game. We basically see Sikkim in PvE and very little else has ever been used super effectively. And that's pretty much it. That's your balance. That's your information so far. Maybe they'll give more details, but yeah. Almost. See, there was one tiny other little thing eagle-eyed people will have picked out. It's what I picked out the second I clicked the post, in addition to the large body of text to break up any good blog post. What do you want? You want images. And it's kind of interesting to me that one of the images Arenanet threw into this blog post showed a character fighting on a PvP map that is currently not available in the game. No, not a totally new PvP map. Don't get that excited. I'm sure they would have. If there was a new PvP map coming, they would have talked about it on this blog post. But actually, it was Raid on the Capricorn. Those of you who don't know this story, it was an old underwater-themed PvP map. A while back, Arenanet decided they didn't like the idea of underwater content in PvP. They sealed off an area of the Heart of the Mist, and they removed one of the maps entirely from the game. But it was a serviceable map, and it was a fun map, and I think it's a good, appropriate map for the unranked and hot join formats in the game. Now that leagues are distinct, now that Arenanet know what they're doing, my theory is that they threw this little image in there to let people see and speculate on, and it could be that we'll see Raid of the Capricorn finally come back to Guild Wars 2, and that would be very, very cool. But don't take that as explicit confirmation from me. Maybe it was just an old stock screenshot that I had. I don't know. Alright, next big thing that I talked about a little bit earlier in the week, the big bomb that they dropped on points of interest for us, gliding in Tyria. They've announced to us that this is 100% official, this is coming to the game. It's not just in Ore, it's not just in a small region or anything, it is everywhere. What are they doing feature-wise to support this? What are they doing to make it work really well in the game? Well, basically nothing. So, yeah, this is gliding in Tyria. Once you learn how to glide in the jungle, you can just take that glider anywhere you like. So basically about half an hour into Heart of Thorns, you unlock the glider for use everywhere around all of PvE. In Ore, any map you think, in any city, any jumping puzzle area, they've basically done nothing else, right? There's no extra mastery, there's no specific training of it. They're not elaborating on any of those systems, they're just letting you glide. And this definitely seems to me, as has been pointed out by many others, that this is Arenanet appreciating when a free-to-play player sees a gliding friend, they're going to want to buy the expansion. That's going to be a serious thing that encourages people to, you know, buy the expansions, whether it's Heart of Thorns or ones in the future, and then they'll be able to glide themselves, because they're going to get mad jealous when they see their friends gliding around and they can't. Also, I think undervalued by the community at large actually is how much more this is going to drive gem store sales of unique glider skins. Far more people are going to be interested in buying glider skins and giving, you know, paying credit card money for gems or whatever instead of transferring gold. Basically, it's going to be a big money maker for them, and I think that's the main reason that they've done it. And everyone in general seems happy with the change. I'm not entirely happy. I will clarify that this is definitely more of a personal opinion of mine, and I don't think too many people will share it. Gliding, to me, will change the game an awful lot without any way of toggling off the mastery, any way of properly proccing when it comes on. You guys will know that any kind of vague jumping puzzle or gameplay you experience, you can always accidentally throw that glider out. I do think it will massively change my perspective of playing all of Guild Wars 2. It's going to change some of the jumping puzzles, but hey, it's better than no gliding at all, I suppose, for most of us, and it's a good change. So let's roll into some the other small things that the blog post talked about, things we definitely didn't see coming. Number one, they're changing the way you get credit for events. This is more of a small quality of life thing, but it will benefit certain people with certain playstyles quite a lot. Of course, one of the themes of Heart of Thorns was encouraging different playstyles, and there's a question as to how successful they really were with that. Now, you can look at raids, and you can say, yeah, look, there's like a tanky guy who has a very defined role, and there are even dedicated support characters. There's a use for some of these healing power stats in the game. This is really cool. But then you look away from raids, and you kind of realize, oh, wait, hold on. It really is just in raids and very niche, very specific areas of the game that there are these alternate playstyles opening up. The rest of the game is still not particularly happy to let you be a healer, or particularly rewarding being a healer. And so they're updating the way that event credit work to actually consider more for that. It's funny they're updating the Shatterer fight at the same time as doing this, because I do remember very clearly back at the original Gamescom, there was an interview someone had with a dev while they were playing that Shatterer encounter back in the original demos. They were stood on one of the sieging turrets from the back lines, and they said, hey, can I just run around healing people and get credit? How can I know, if I run around rezzing all these guys, how can I know that I'm going to be fully rewarded for this? And I remember the dev very confidently saying, oh yes, you will be 100% rewarded for this event. We're encouraging people to play how they want. It doesn't matter whether you're doing the damage, as long as you're supporting people and contributing to the war effort, you will get rewarded. And I remember that so clearly, And then the game came out, and the Shatterer was a joke, and that comment from the dev, though probably their true intention, ended up not true at all, and you were never really well rewarded for just reviving people or giving one another boons or healing. Well, that's exactly what this patch has done. So there will be more ways to get credit. It will be a little bit more rewarded now as a healer running around in the open world. I don't think it will make huge changes because they're still not necessary, but it's a nice little step in the right direction. For what it's worth, they do clarify you still need to actually hit something in the event to then get credit for everything else, but it's a nice step. Next, we have Fractals. Now, they didn't actually say very much about Fractals at all, and I actually think if I was a dedicated Fractal player, I'd be pretty upset by this blog post, and I think that as someone who doesn't play Fractals, I'm still not particularly excited to play them anytime soon, but they did at least confirm that new Fractals will be coming. I mean, that was basically confirmed anyway, whether you like it or not. A post on the forums from the devs saying something to that effect isn't too much different from a blog post here. But yeah, they're saying new Fractals will be coming, but there's no details at all. They're changing LFG slightly. They're making it slightly easier to pick scales, but no big changes yet for Fractals. There you go, guys. That's basically what they said there. On much brighter fronts, there's a new festival. Wait, Wooden Potatoes, what are you talking about? Winter's Day is barely going to have ended. You're telling me that on January 26th, when this thing comes in, we're going to get another festival? Yeah, I am. We're getting Lunar New Year. Lunar New Year is coming back. It's going to be dedicated to Divinity's Reach. It really seems like Divinity's Reach is now the place that the festivals will generally be happening. I don't know whether they're going to change that at any point, but yeah, there's one specific district, and that's funny to me considering that the lore for Divinity's Reach, especially in the early days, talked about an area of Divinity's Reach that was constantly under the effects of a festival, and that's Uzlan's Mechanical Orchestra with the confetti and stuff everywhere, and now it is sort of that way in Divinity's Reach. That's where all of our festivals are, but they're in a different district altogether. But yeah, that's the Lunar New Year. I'll give you guys coverage on that if you don't know what that is when it comes out, but that'll be stuff like Dragon Ball and the arena and all that stuff. Also with new rewards, as they overhauled the Halloween rewards, as they overhauled the Winter's Day rewards. And they did very good on those two events, in my opinion, recently. So I'm expecting something very prestigious from the Lunar New Year, just as we saw with those other two. Changes to squad UI, just tiny little changes, nothing too exciting, honestly. I mean, I'm a little excited as a streamer, as somebody who uses a lot of squad UI. I will now be, any squad UI person will now be able to create lieutenants, or lieutenants, as we say here, who will be able to manage tasks for us, and that's especially for World vs. World, big World vs. World squads. They'll be able to manage things much better without it becoming a huge task. And on top of that, they are expanding the functionality to give you different kinds of pings. So, like, you can mark a location that will actually appear on the world map and the compass, or a player or an enemy, which is pretty nice. Another tiny little thing, I really don't have much to say on this. Tibble is becoming a Miss Champion for Stronghold. Woo! No details on his mechanics. Next, they're talking to us about adding a Brew of the Month thing. Now, I may be mistaken, but is this a feature from World of Warcraft? I'm really not too sure, but it might be something that appears in that game as well. It's a feature that allows you to get a new back piece, and essentially you sign up to the Brew of the Month, and every month you get a different drink, and then if you get them all, you get like a cool reward at the end. Seems really random, really sudden and odd to just drop in the game. But I guess more features, more content is cool. I do specifically really like, design-wise, guys, when they add new features and they encourage players to go to specific areas of the world. So the fact that we have to go back to the Eldvin Monastery in Queensdale and it has more purpose and something else to do there is actually really cool to me. I like that style thing. It just seems really random and left field. But yeah, Brew of the Month, and we'll talk about it when it comes out. Decorations. Now, there's a little change here. Nothing massive. I had a bit of a discussion with someone on stream chat the other day who was talking about how kind of bad they did the decorations, and Arenanet shouldn't have just done it all in gold sinks. It's always been clear that Arenanet did want to actually give us decorations as rewards for completing content, and this patch is where that starts happening. So they are adding decorations for killing various world bosses and raid bosses. So there's that extra perk now of going out, hunting them down, killing big game. This is a cool idea, and then they expand on it further by... Obviously, if you just kill the Claw of Jormag once, oh yeah, now we get the Claw of Jormag statue. There's not too much prestige with that, right? You then have it as a decoration, and it's cool to get more decorations there. But how do you add a bit of prestige there? Well, they're also allowing you, if you kill a boss enough times, you can craft lots of these decorations together into a large version. And then it's like, yeah, check it out. We killed Sabbatha X amount of times. We've got this badass huge statue of her now. And don't forget that they've just announced that they're updating Shatterer too. So presumably Shatterer is going to have his own decoration associated with that. This is a system that I really like. It's good to see them integrating more decorations throughout just the general game, and we know they had some weird hiccups with that back at the start of Heart of Thorns. Nice little feature. There are a couple of different control changes coming. And the main among them that I'd just like to talk about is the fact we're going to get a toggle for the button we usually have to hold down to view items. Alright, so let me put this into your head. Think about you're in Verdant Brink. It's nighttime. You're flying around. You're looking for airship cargo in the routes. Or you're running around, you're looking for airship cargo spread throughout the jungle. You're also looking for different things to craft. You're probably constantly holding the control button. And isn't that damn annoying? Well, yeah, so now there's going to be a toggle where you just hit it and it's up forever now for you. And you can see all of it. That alone, I'm far too excited about. I find it sad that they can announce so many cool features and changes to the game. And people fixate on this as like, hallelujah, this is the best thing in the world. And it's kind of true that this is something that I'm far too excited about. But veteran players who have been contesting with their pinky finger on left control for so long, that's a load of our minds. So, everything I talked about is January 26th. That's coming all pretty soon. Pretty nice stuff. Pretty good changes. But there are still a lot of things that they didn't really talk about. Now, they have definitely said, look, we're splitting 50-50. Expansion versus developing streaming updates. But what about stuff like Live in World? What about a lot of the other things? So I do want to talk about what this blog post didn't go over, because I do think it has been neglectful in a few ways. First of all, legendaries. Now, Colin did mention on Guild Chat last week that, you know, legendaries were being made, but at the moment they're working on fixing legendaries. This blog didn't talk about any of the new legendaries at all. I know a lot of us are really anticipating them. I personally am not that excited about any of the ones they've already added with Heart of Thorns. And since this was actually one of the primary features marketed for Heart of Thorns, it's kind of sad to think that there's no information at all on their State of the Game post, but whatever. World vs. World as well. World vs. World was mentioned on the post, don't get me wrong. And some of the changes they've already talked to us about with World vs. World are going in on this patch. So, for example, the removal of auto upgrades, the points per kill being added, the changes with the rallying and the rezzing, which I talked about before. All those changes are going through, but what about the rest of it? What about the massive overhaul? It's completely indeterminate, the time. It's not coming soon. It's not this first seasonal update. It sounds like it's going to be a while. What we did get confirmation of was that it's so big that they're going to have dedicated betas for it. So that's pretty reassuring to think about the fact that they've already been working for over a year on it, and they're still not at a point where they can talk about it. Either tells you two things. One, that they don't know how to work, or two, that it is huge in scope. The way it's described in the blog post is that it's massive, it's exhaustive, it's dealing loads of different things, but that could just be marketing speak. We'll see how things go. But yeah, I know that definitely World vs. World players, you're going to be waiting a little bit longer, it seems, before finally your game type has something good going on. As well as World vs. World, I think the main thing I was really expecting them to talk a lot about here was Living World. And that's because this idea of, you know, how do they strike their balance and expansion coming up versus streaming updates? Well, Living World are like the backbone of their streaming updates traditionally. So what's going on with that? And they really didn't give us any details. They talked a little bit about the lore. I will read you guys the lore. I do enjoy the lore. And it's nice to see some information about the general story threads that Living World's going to go through. So here we go. Within the golden city of Tyria, the last known dragon egg rests protected by the Exalted. But the egg begins to crack. Oh, that's pretty interesting. What creature lies within the egg? An enemy or an ally? In other corners of Tyria, the remaining powerful Elder Dragons continue to expand their control. So hopefully we'll see some movements from then, could tie into the Shatterer patch. But what impact will the death of the two Elder Dragons have on them and on Tyria itself? And that's important. I like that they mentioned that could be a story thread because, you know, if you are one of the remaining Elder Dragons and these cosmic things that have been around for God knows how long are suddenly dying, they should react weirdly, right? What impact will being held by Morgemoth have on Zoja and Logan? What research will Timey uncover at Rata Novus? What plans do Anise and the Shining Blade have for Kanak? I find that one interesting, though. That's going to be a main story thread. And then lastly, how will the Black Citadel react to find out that Ritlock's back alive? Which is interesting. I don't know. Maybe that will tie into something to do with the ghost finally being put to rest or something, as Ritlock was trying to do before he disappeared. But we'll see. So that's all they talked about, right? Like, they gave us the primary story threads, nothing else. No idea of a release schedule. No idea on whether this new development balance is going to mean Season 3 and Season 4 are far shorter. Ideally, both Season 3 and Season 4 both give us 2 new maps so that, you know, we have 8 Heart of Thorns maps. But who knows? Who knows? And I just think it's a little bit sad that they're so unclear about that. Because, again, I could kind of tell people, oh, Heart of Thorns is small, but rolled into that $50 price is the Living World updates that you'll get in that you can't have otherwise. And then no talk about it at all? A little incredulous there. Next as well, raids. They don't talk about raids, really. They mention that another wing is coming. We get the name of it. It's Salvation Pass, which is a very white mantly badass name, I will say, but no release date, no ETA, no information whatsoever, and that probably means it's not coming for a while. So there you go, that's pretty much it. I was a little upset to see that there was basically no talk about guilds either, right? Like, there is no Claw Island Guild Hall confirmed. The whole core Tyria gliding is actually kind of cool for the Guild Hall idea, because it means they can now very comfortably add any Guild Hall anywhere they like in the world, and it's obvious you can glide in it because you can glide damn near everywhere. So that's a nice little perk. But they haven't talked about any of that or any changes. They haven't even talked about like bug fixes for the current arena issues or whatever, or raising decoration caps or any things that some of us who have really invested in that area of the game want. But maybe we're quite a small community at the moment, so who knows. But there you go, guys. That is everything coming up on January 26th. I'll definitely be back when the patch comes out to talk to you guys about it. Usually Arenanet will do a blog like this, and then when the patch actually comes out, there's even more stuff they never talked about, and then those are in the patch notes, and then there's even more stuff that wasn't even in the patch notes. So I'll try to keep you updated. But yeah, what do you guys think about the seasonal updates? I definitely started with the best thing for me. The Shatterer update is completely left field for me and really cool. Very excited about it. We have another festival to look forward to. It's looking really good. It's looking really good. Do you think that what we saw today is actually enough to counterbalance the stuff we didn't see? I'm curious. Anyway, thanks very much for watching, guys. Do tune in tomorrow for some more news about some other very cool upcoming stuff. And until then, I'll be in-game geeking out and running around very excitedly. See you next time, guys.